Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Red Raptor Writes. Today I'm back with yet another dinosaur documentary review. This time we'll be analyzing the two-part series Chased by Dinosaurs, starring the legendary Nigel Marvin. For those of you not familiar, he's a television personality and conservationist who's done many wildlife programs. We'll see more of him in Sea Monsters, Prehistoric Park, and when Prehistoric Kingdom development continues. It's such a nice change to talk about someone who isn't borderline pedo. As for the show itself, it's kind of an extension of the Walking With series. It's also created by Tim Haynes and the BBC, but uses a vastly different format. Instead of just seeing prehistoric creatures doing their thing along with some narration, Nigel acts like a Mesozoic crocodile hunter. RIP. Let's see how Chased by Dinosaurs holds up to modern views and how it compares to everything we've covered previously. So guys, let's dig this up. Chased by Dinosaurs is a very well-made show that still holds up technologically speaking, and in some instances, the dinosaurs hold up too. I'm gonna apologize now for sounding wishy-washy as I compliment this dino doc. The thing is, there are facts presented that are scientifically accurate, but at the same time are interwoven with the inaccurate. Let's kick things off with the Hadrosaur this time. Saurolophus makes an appearance in the first episode, Giant Claw. This is the larger Asian species, S. angustirostris. Although the smaller type species, S. osborni, comes from Canada. For the species shown in the documentary, there are several facts correctly stated. Overall, these guys look pretty good. Their size is correctly stated at 40 feet. Actually, this is an understatement, with some going to 43 feet. Wow, 43 feet. Sounds like Dan Schneider's dream. The Saurolophus are also given their signature little crest sitting at the top of their heads. One feature that made the Hadrosaurs so successful was how they process food, being able to chew plants unlike many other herbivores, which were only able to snip at leaves or strip them. Nigel Marvin points out that the way they chew is much different than mammals. Mammals have more flexible jaws that swing from side to side to grind vegetation, but dinosaurs couldn't do this. The way Hadrosaurs and a few others did this is hard to explain and easier to visualize. They used an up and down motion, but when their lower jaws moved down, they distorted, spreading apart. When coming back up, the lower jaw pulverized food against the upper. Your Dinosaurs Are Wrong recently covered this in their Iguanodon episode, so check that out when you can. This is a BBC show, and we know from experience that their designs can be pretty funky, but still good job here. Another winner is the Sarcosuchus. Although we're used to seeing them in North Africa, this is the South American species S. hardy. It's a great addition to the show's roster, being such an epic creature. Like the Saurolophus, I instantly knew this was Sarcosuchus because they nailed the design. It's very clearly distinct from other crocodilomorphs due to its long, thin snout that ends in a bulbous nose, almost like a giant Cretaceous gharial. The Dino Doc suggests that Sarco had dinosaurs on the menu, which from what I can find was possible. Their snouts, although noticeably long, don't seem designed for grasping small slippery prey, but were suited for a generalist feeding style. So killing large game is within the realm of possibility. Although, studies have argued that this large predator wouldn't have been able to withstand the forces of a death roll, so it would have had a harder time than its relatives the Dinosuchus and Perusaurus. Surprisingly enough, we haven't gotten to discuss Velociraptor yet. Despite its mainstream popularity, it just hasn't shown up. Even if they aren't depicted with feathers, there are still areas to compliment. Chased by Dinosaurs doesn't give audiences what they expect to see because of Jurassic Park. No, we don't get 6-foot geniuses with heavy Allosaurus snouts who say, "Alan." Nah, instead we're shown Mongolian animals of the correct size, less than 2 feet tall and 6 feet long. I also like the skull shape. The BBC didn't reuse their Utahraptor model, but showed that long, thin snout with the upturned snoot at the end. Good stuff. By the way, you may have noticed that I don't mention Jurassic Park very much in these documentary reviews. That's very intentional. Dinosaurs exist outside of the Jurassic franchise. They're fascinating enough as it is. They don't need Steven Spielberg to make them cool. It annoys me that whenever I read a more mainstream article, they always feel the godforsaken need to mention the movies as if audiences wouldn't care otherwise. So I only mention Jurassic Park when necessary. I love JP, and I love Dinosaurs. It's perfectly normal to love them separately. Okay, mini rant over. Where was I? Oh yeah, the positives. The Argentinosaurus, it needs help. I'll certainly come back to them later, but it is correctly described as the largest dinosaur, and by extension, largest land animal of all time. Every few years, some newcomer arrives to make clickbait headlines, largest dinosaur ever. We just got that with Australotitan, but studies always seem to support Argentinosaurus in the end. Other dinos like Supersaurus were longer, but the Argentinosaurus was the most massive. In Walking with Dinosaurs, we got the Tyrannosaurus, which was but the BBC improved for sure with their Tarbosaurus, which was basically the Asian equivalent of T-Rex. These predators did have key differences though. Tarbosaurus had a thinner snout, even shorter arms, and a smaller overall size. Nowadays, you mainly just see the name Tarbosaurus bataar being used, separate from Tyrannosaurus, but that wasn't the case back in 2002. The debate was much more hotly contested. If I'm remembering correctly, even the Walking With show that was basically a re-edit, Prehistoric Planet, used Tyrannosaurus bataar instead, but I may be misremembering, it's been a solid decade. So kudos to the BBC and Tim Haynes for going with the name Tarbosaurus. The final compliment I'll give is to the documentary's portrayal of Giganotosaurus behavior. Well, A, they use mobs rather than the pack-hunting theropod cliche that should be used far more sparingly, and B, how they hunt is a really cool bit of speculative behavior. Giganotosaurus was a Carcharodontosaurid. Being a member of this family, they had thin, blade-like teeth that were perfect for slicing into flesh. Because of this, we see them use their teeth to slash at prey and then wait for it to bleed out. At that point, it's just free real estate. Do we know this is exactly how Gigas hunted? No, we didn't really send a camera crew to the Cenomanian stage of the Cretaceous, but this is a great piece of speculative behavior. Most of the documentaries we've covered so far have been from the late 90s or early 2000s, so yeah, their facts and depictions find themselves dated. This isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes they thought they were correct based on the evidence at the time. Given another 20 years, I'm sure the dino docs that come out today will be corrected. Once again, I must add that this segment is more for knowledge's sake. I'm not downgrading Tim Haynes for not regarding discoveries that hadn't happened yet. Just like in Walking with Dinosaurs, we're presented with a giant Ornithocheirus, which is strange considering its episode took place tens of millions of years before this, but they really wanted to recycle it. Recycle! Of course, Ornithocheirus didn't reach a wingspan of 12 meters. What actually happened here was that a South American species was described, originally part of the type species Osimus, but later called O. mesembrinus. These remains were much larger than the British type species. But even then, the lengths of 40 feet were an exaggeration, with measurements of about 27 feet being more likely. Since 2013, the South American species has been reclassified, finding the genus Tropognathus to be valid. So really what we see in Walking with Dinosaurs and Chased by Dinosaurs is a super large, time-jumping Tropognathus. Ornithocheirus was smaller and only British. Other sizes given throughout this documentary also find themselves out of touch and out of time, but for different reasons. It's hard for scientists to estimate the length and weight of some extinct animals, especially when all the remains we have are fragmentary. This is very much the case with Argentinosaurus. Within the 30 years since its discovery, estimates have varied from lengths of 30 to 36 meters and weights ranging from 50 tons to 110 tons depending on the techniques applied. The most recent studies from 2019 give a weight between 65 and 75 tons and a length of 35 meters. With that being said, Chased by Dinosaurs estimates Argentinosaurus at a massive 90 tons. Regardless, it remains the largest dinosaur known to science. The Sarcosuchus too is oversized by the BBC. Nigel calls this giant croc relative over 40 feet long, which was correct for the time, but unfortunately, time comes for us all. More recent and more complete findings have brought down the size dramatically to about 31 feet or 10 meters. So more of an Albertosaurus-sized predator instead of T-Rex. Yup, screw the imperial and metric systems, let's measure everything in dinosaurs. The giant predator Giganotosaurus is a giant predator, don't get me wrong, but the exact size isn't actually stated, instead only being compared to Tyrannosaurus. Pretty much the whole claim to fame for the Giga is being larger than T-Rex. Chased by Dinosaurs calls it the largest land predator of all time and 2 tons heavier than the Rex. Neither of these claims are true. The Tyrannosaurus specimen Sue was 40 feet long and 8 tons. The largest T-Rex found, Scotty, had a length of 43 feet and weight of nearly 9 tons. Then the Giganotosaurus holotype, the first substantial specimen found, was about 41 feet long and about 6 tons, but larger estimates of 43 feet and 8 tons have been given to a second specimen found. Alright, so what does all this mean? This means that Tyrannosaurus and Giganotosaurus were actually about the same length, with individual variation playing a role in which one was longer. Some Rexes were bigger than some Gigas, and vice versa. Giganotosaurus might have been longer on average, but T-Rex was heavier, so technically it was the largest terrestrial predator in terms of mass. Then lengthwise, Spinosaurus was the longest at 49 feet. So whichever way you slice it, Giganotosaurus was not the largest land predator ever. Also, keep in mind that remains of the South American predator are fragmentary, so size estimates vary. Some paleontologists think the lengths I said are exaggerations. Until more specimens are found, we can't say for certain. Also, it is extremely unlikely that we found the largest specimens of both theropods, or even that the largest individuals fossilized, so we may never know their max sizes. The last outdated bit I want to cover is the unnamed iguanodont found in Land of Giants. The poor creature received a description in 2007 with the name Macrogryphosaurus. Apparently, recycling the WWD iguanodon model was completely wrong.
Recycle!
Macrogryphosaurus was a more basal ornithopod, being bipedal and looking more like Hypsilophodon than iguanodon. The term Hypsilophodont has fallen out of use, so this genus belongs to the clade Elasmaria. On to the real mistakes. Many made here are just the typical early 2000s tropes that should have died long before. I doubt they're surprising anybody at this point with their shrink wrapping and pronated wrists. And of course, you've probably been waiting for me to comment on the lack of feathers. If when dinosaurs roamed America can do it a year before, there's no excuse. The poor velociraptor looks totally naked and bald. All dromaeosaurs had wings and well-developed contour feathers covering their bodies. Anything less is inaccurate, but they didn't try at all here. Like I said about Nothornychus before, paleontologists already knew about feathers in therizinosaurs, since downy feathers were found in Bapiosaurus. At the very least, Mononychus is shown with some down feathering, which I guess it's something. Pretty much the bare minimum the BBC could have done. Another animal that I'm surprised hasn't come up yet is Protoceratops. Overall, it looks alright. I like the added information about their bone-crushing beaks, since the Dueling Dinosaurs fossil displays a velociraptor's arm crushed by the herbivore. Unfortunately, the hands are pronated and they're given the typical short tail seen in larger ceratopsians, when really they had relatively longer tails with very long caudal vertebrae that formed a kind of sail-like structure. These key features were sadly missed in this depiction. Although the title is Chased by Dinosaurs, we still have to talk about the famous pterosaur Pteranodon. The real animal lived around America's Great Plains region about 85 million years ago. This area was a large inland sea that split North America in two, called the Western Interior Seaway, where Pteranodon caught fish. Interestingly enough, there is clear sexual dimorphism between the count 'em two, genders within the genus. The males were 50% larger than the females and had a much longer, more elegant crest that is so famous today. The females were much smaller and had these short triangular crests. Well, at least they were shown eating fish. That's something. Oh, and they got the size right of about a 20-foot wingspan. But they're found in double Shreking Argentina, thousands of miles away from their home, and 10 million years earlier. This is a prime example of a Dinodoc just shoving random stuff in to look cool. Pteranodon has no place being in Land of Giants and needs to go home. No sexual dimorphism is present either. They all look like adult males. Is this like a pterosaur prison or something? Don't drop the fish. The wings are too sharp when they should look rounded. Like some other creatures, they're lacking the proper integument. Basically, all pterosaurs should be shown with pycnofibers, these little hair-like filaments. It was already known that pterosaurs had these. Heck, even the Ornithocheirus in Giant of the Skies had them. Their beaks look strange too, being too straightforward coming out of the face. Instead, they should be curving upwards. And the final insult to injury is the outdated notion that large pterosaurs either couldn't fly or depended on the ocean's wind currents to provide lift. Yeah, no. Even the big pterosaurs were capable of powered flight. Don't listen to the haters, guys. You can fly to your dreams.
Dream, 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 dream.
Another problem with this show is the time jumping. Aside from Pteranodon, many creatures that lived in the same area but different times are squished together just so the audience gets to see all the cool stuff. Giant Claw takes place in Mongolia 75 million years ago, so it makes sense to see Velociraptor and Protoceratops. As for the Saurolophus, Therizinosaurus, Mononychus, and Tarbosaurus, well, they all lived in the early Maastrichtian stage of the late Cretaceous about 70 million years ago. So once again, they're Land of Giants is no better. It's common to see Giganotosaurus and Argentinosaurus living together like they do here. But in actuality, the Giga came before. It was their close relative Mapusaurus that lived alongside Argentinosaurus 95 million years ago. By the way, should I give Planet Dinosaur the A now, or do you really want to wait months for that review to come out? I've been mentioning the Argentinosaurus, so I'm just gonna say it. Tim Haynes and company got this Titanosaur completely wrong. Yes, it's big, and yes, it's a sauropod. That's all I can compliment about the design. The head looks like a photoshopped Maz Kanata, or maybe that one pod racer in Phantom Menace. If they look like a creature from a good Star Wars movie like the Tauntauns, then I wouldn't mind, but nah. Titanosaur remains are usually very fragmentary, and Argentinosaurus is no exception, so we don't actually know what the skull looked like. But what we do have of some relatives implies a diplodocid-like skull that was long and round. They've been also recreated to look like Brachiosaurus too, but please, anything would be better than this. The neck is strangely short, scrawny, and horizontal. From what I can find, it has never been described like this. Titanosaurs had these long, tall, thick necks, similar to, again, Brachiosaurus. Lastly, those feet are really bad, pretty much just copied and pasted elephantine feet. You can even see the toes and claws sticking out. This was not the case for Titanosaurs. Many of them had very reduced front limbs, not even having toes. Instead, their metacarpals were modified into columns. Argentinosaurus literally had pillars for feet. The back feet, too, were messed up and should have 3 big turtle-like claws with reduced 4th and 5th digits. Before I close out, it's worth mentioning that Nigel Marvin isn't the brightest bulb in the light bulb mountain. Well, as a character in the documentary, not in real life. He seems like a really cool dude, so I don't want beef there. But in Chased by Dinosaurs, his character makes some piss poor decisions. Like his tendency to get up close and personal with his subjects, even if they can swipe his head off. He also runs around a late Cretaceous forest in the middle of the night barefoot, right after finding a scorpion. To top it all off, obviously he's time traveling. In order to preserve the space-time continuum, the goal should be to have as little environmental impact as possible. But nah, he abducts the scorpion and a Mononychus. Viewers at home, if you time travel to the Mesozoic era, please avoid making any of these rookie mistakes. Nigel Marvin himself has done a lot of great work and is a childhood hero for a lot of us, but this isn't a review of him. This is a dinosaur documentary review, and Chased by Dinosaurs is pretty mediocre.
Mediocre?
The 2-part miniseries falls into a lot of bad tropes from its time and makes plenty of inaccurate decisions on top of them. At least the problems get balanced out by a couple of good design choices and some moments of quality information. So there's still plenty to learn here. After lots of back and forth in my mind, I'm going to give Chased by Dinosaurs a generous C. Thank you everyone who takes the time out to watch my videos, and I'm especially thankful for those who leave comments that provide viewers with extra information. I don't get to cover everything in these reviews, and sometimes I miss some things, so I appreciate those who add to the discourse. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and check out my social media. See you next time.